Cool. Hello, hello. Welcome, everybody. Trevor, it is so cool to see you and to get the chance to chat today.
Great. Thanks for having me, Joe.
So welcome, everyone, and Trevor to our third and final Facts and Snacks event for the series. My name is Jamiro. I'm the host of the OfferZen podcast. I work on the blog at OfferZen. And Trevor, it's really like I wanted to turn this into a bit of a party. So for lunch, I was going to bring a whole bunch of vegetables and greens because, you know, lettuce, turnip, the beet. But yeah, I like puns and eye rolls. I thought that would be a good way to start. I assume everyone is laughing, but I can't hear you. Yeah, so we'll be chatting to, this is the series where we chat to some of South Africa's leading entrepreneurs every Thursday between 12 and 12:30. As I said, this is the last. We'll be launching a new round of speakers at the end of September, so keep an ear and an eye out for the invite. But as I said, welcome, Trevor. It's really cool to have you. Could you do like a 3-story elevator pitch just to briefly introduce who you are?
Cool, thanks. Yeah, and thanks for having me. Thanks, everyone. I know you could be having your snacks anywhere, but if you are joining us, thank you for being here. So yeah, my name's Trevor. I'm the co-founder, CEO of Lulalend, Lulalend online business lending platform that we've been running for the last 6 years. Prior to that, got into the entrepreneurial space, managed to exit a venture, and prior to that, I'm a chartered accountant, or was a chartered accountant, or still am, but was in the investment banking space.
Awesome. Thank you. We'll dive into some of those details in just a little bit, but just to give a little bit of a flow to the event in case you are here for the first time, although I am seeing some repeat joiners in the participants. We're going to have a quick rapid fire Q&A session just to get warmed up. We'll follow that by a deep dive into a specific topic, and then we're going to have an audience Q&A. So on that note, for anyone who's joining, there is like a list of tabs on your right-hand side, or if your screen is small, it'll be underneath the videos. Chat, questions, and polls. Please jump into the questions tab and throw all your questions that you want to ask Trevor in there. Upvoting means it'll be more likely for us to pick them. So also engage with other questions you want to see or you want to hear me ask. And we'll dive into that at the end. I will remind you in between to do that as well, though. And then on the poll, you can also engage on conversation and chat. You can share what you're having for lunch and engage with some of the other people. And then also there's a swag competition. So one lucky attendee, unfortunately, this is only open to SA audiences, but we're going to be giving away a swag hamper just for joining. So make sure you stick around to the end to find out if it was you. But with that, let's jump in. So as you've heard, Trevor is the co-founder and CEO of Lulalend, leading South African fintech company. He's also previously founded 5 Ounces, qualified as a chartered accountant, as he said, and yeah, quite a CV. So it's really nice to have you and to get to chat to you. But right into the rapid fires, let's start with this one. What are the 2 biggest lessons that you've learned about fundraising for your startup?
I think the biggest one, and I see this issue with founders all the time, is trying to put a 5-year vision into a pitch deck and present it to a VC or an angel, whatever the case may be, and try to sell them on this massive vision, where really what you need to be doing is, yeah, show your ambitions. This is our vision, but over the short term, this is what we're looking to execute on, and this is the vision we need to get over the line. VCs are far more interested in buying into that scenario. And then the other thing is just searching far and wide. There's if you're not feeling fortunate in the current market in terms of accessing finance, look globally. That's what we did. So we've got a bulk of global investors behind us, and there is global appetite in the South African market and in emerging markets. So don't limit yourself. There is a lot out there.
I think the global appetite one is interesting because I think it's easy to say it's there, but it's kind of scary to start looking for it and also to know where to look for it. Do you have any lessons you've learned about even just approaching people or finding out where that global appetite lies?
That's actually, one of the best stories in terms of how we actually really got going when we raised our pre-seed round. When we needed a sizable piece of capital in South African terms, for European investors, it doesn't look as big. But I literally got onto LinkedIn. I heard about an angel investor who, in his personal capacity, is quite successful out of Europe, and just heard that he had invested into local African startups before. I pinged him on LinkedIn. He got back to me 2 weeks later, asked for a pitch deck, sent that through. He bought myself and my co-founder tickets to the UK to talk terms, and we signed a deal from there. So, I mean, LinkedIn is a channel, but don't limit yourself, and ask for introductions and that sort of thing. I've also, gone on and introduced a number of people into our investment network. But people know people, and as more global investors have got into the space over the last few years, there is more opportunity to get in touch with the right people.
Yeah, I've also heard that even just people are generally quite willing to share advice. So even if you just reach out and say, "Hey, we'd love to pick your brain," that's been like a really good way. But yeah, interesting story. That's thanks for sharing. And then also, what are like 2 tips on the best way to establish a product market fit?
Yes, I think on the product market fit side, I mean, you've got to know, product market fit equals traction. You know it when you have it, but it's also always evolving. It's always changing. So you've got to know how to measure it, and you've got to know how to work towards it. It's never static. So you've got to always keep that in mind. But in terms of 2 top tips, I think first and foremost, when you find a customer who's completely satisfied or enthusiastic about your product, you've got to work tirelessly to understand, why they're so excited about it. And when you found out exactly what it is, then you've got to double down on that and make sure you're doing it better than anyone else in the market. Then to extend your product market fit, you've got to approach those customers who are happy for the same reasons as that other customer, but there's other areas where they're not as satisfied, and really drill down into those areas, and start solving there, and really leave the rest of the customers out of the equation at this point in time. Because, once you've solved for those 2 areas, then you'll start feeling that traction coming through.
And what's the best advice that you've received about starting a business?
I think the best advice I received or picked up, I mean, I can't remember specifically being told it, but it was not living or operating your business with excess or in excess, meaning make sure every cent counts. And that's because, the longer your cash flow runway, whether it's in your business or in your personal life, gives you more time to eventually succeed. So, I mean, if I think to my first venture, I'd saved up enough money for about 9 months that I knew I wouldn't have to draw a salary. That eventually turned into 18 months before I was drawing a paycheck out of the business. So you can imagine I was living super lean and probably one bologna sandwich away from throwing it all in. But giving myself that time to get to that point where, it evolved into a healthy exit scenario was really cool. Yeah, that was probably the best advice. And I still use it to this day. I mean, you realize, like, we live in so much excess so many times, but we don't need to be surrounded by materialistic things that really don't add any value, both in our personal lives and in the business.
Just before we dive into the more deep dive questions, I'm curious to know, like, what are some of the ways you lived lean? Like, what were your biggest ways of saving on expenses when you were starting that business?
Just cutting down everything. I mean, you realize exactly what it is you need to not survive, but to just live comfortably. Things like owning a house, I think for a founder is, especially if you're pretty young and you don't have a lot of capital to your name, isn't the best way to go about things. Rather look for a cheap rental option to get yourself through. Then just extravagance. Like, I mean, I didn't buy myself a new pair of clothes or anything for 18 months. In fact, my girlfriend at the time, now wife, treated me to 2 new pairs of pants and 2 new work shirts. And that's all I had within an 18-month period. But you realize you don't need much more than that. And I think it was pretty eye-opening for me, especially coming from a investment banking background where it's literally the opposite. It's about, how you look. You got to look flashy, nice car, fancy watch, all that sort of thing, which you actually find out is fairly irrelevant in the greater scheme of things.
all of a sudden socks for Christmas become quite an asset.
Yeah, you're excited about it.
Exactly. Cool. Thanks for that little intro into the rapid fire questions. Just a reminder for everyone, please, use the questions tab, ask your questions. There are already some people asking, so feel free to upvote the ones that you'd like me to touch on. But while you're thinking of questions, Trevor, so Lulalend has worked with some of the biggest brands in South Africa, things like Vodacom, Payfast, Yoco, Takealot, and offering your platform as software as a service and integrating your tech there. But why was lending as a service integral to your business model in addition to direct to customer?
Yes, I think there's two parts to it. So initially, just launching the business, it was important that we launched through a partnership, and I'll explain why. So, I mean, 5 years ago, the digital lending environment was very different. There was no one giving B2B loans, especially in a digital context where you're never actually meeting a customer. So for us, it was super important to launch with a partner. And we were very fortunate that Payfast, who at that time had already built a pretty sizable business and had a lot of merchants who were utilizing their gateway, were keen enough to partner with us and saw the value add. So for us, going with a partner in a market where no one had really vetted anyone online on a B2B space, there were a whole bunch of inherent risks around it. We thought going with a partner was the best way to start, to test our concept, to see if there's interest in the market there. And at the same time, we could access data around those merchants through Payfast. Once an applicant gave approval that they were happy to share that data. So we could use that data into our credit modeling, understand the business a whole lot better, and fund them from there. So that was the initial entry into our partnership. So we knew longer term partnerships were going to be key to our business. But at the same time, we knew that partnerships are a lot of work and are resource intensive. So post Payfast, and we knew that there was traction. Obviously, that base of merchants were largely focused on the e-commerce space, but we knew we could. There was appetite to go into the broader market, and that's when we really opened up our direct lending business and started growing Lulalend as a brand to start lending. Until about 2 years ago, where through capital raises, we were in a good position that we could start focusing our business in partnerships a whole lot more and giving them the resource and attention that they needed. And really, over the last 2 years, that's been a big focus of ours, because for our direct business, we'll continue to grow that linearly pretty well. But there'll never be that real step-up growth. If you're really looking to dive into that step-up growth, that's what a partnership can offer to you. So that's why it's been a bigger core of focus for us.
So in terms of partnerships, what did building partnerships require from you in your context specifically? Like, what were those requirements?
The biggest thing is a partner who was interested in partnering and the value add that they could give to their merchant base, give them access to funding. And at the same time, the partner being tech-based, so that they would be able to do the necessary integrations and that sort of thing to go live with us. So for that's how to look from a partner's perspective. Internally on our side, we've had to really look at our platform and say, how do we develop something that is very flexible, very customizable, to be able to suit the needs of any new potential partnership, and we don't have to go back to square one for each one and start developing, a completely new platform to be able to service them. At the same time, automation has been key to our journey, and especially in a partnership landscape where end to end we give our businesses who are looking for funding complete automation that they can make an application online and get access to funding on an immediate decision on their applications. So when you step into a partnership environment, these tools need to be available immediately so that you can service their base and they can get the expectations that you've promised at the start. So those have been the two sort of core areas internally that we've focused on.
And do you have any advice for how to make that effective? Because my assumption, for example, on the automation and tooling side, just having those isn't enough. like that's not the silver bullet. Like having the thing is not the silver bullet. So like, do you have any advice or principles that have helped you in building partnerships effectively?
Yeah, so I suppose the three ways, well, we look at it in three parts to any partnership. So there's the upfront part, which is you're pitching the partnership opportunity, but you aligning strategically with the partner. And if I had to talk about a principle in that space, that we need to be empathetic to the partner's needs, understand what they're trying to achieve commercially. The person that you're actually speaking to, if it's a bigger organization, what are their KPIs that they're looking to meet? That makes sure that they're interested in giving full buy-in to the solution that you're proposing. And then the partners, customers as well, you need to constantly keep them in mind. So we would call that top level, being empathetic to the strategic relationship that you're looking to get into. Then once you've passed that, you go into the implementation, development side of the partnership. Our key guiding principle there is just reliability and open communication. If you can continually practice that, there's a good chance you're going to get over the line to make sure that this partnership comes to fruition. And then the third one, when you've gone through the implementation, the development, and your product's live, it's about being dynamic. At that point, you've done all the hard work, or at least you think you have, but there's still a lot to be done, and you need to be dynamic to continually evolve that partnership and take it to where it needs to go. And you can't just sit back and say, all right, the work's done, let it fly from here.
And from a user's perspective, what key insights have you gotten from your users that you didn't know before you started this process?
So I think what's really beneficial to all of this is that ourselves being a direct lender, we feel the pitfalls day in, day out of what an end user feels in terms of when they're using our product. So that already gives us a head start when we go into these partnerships, that we know ultimately what their customers want for this to be successful. So I think that's been really beneficial in how we think about things, and making sure that what we're building and what we're developing and what we're reiterating is really going to move the needle. And it's not just doing it for the sake of it. It's because this is actually a customer requirement. It's going to improve a customer experience. It's going to ensure the opportunity for us to will give more opportunity for us to fund the business. So that's where I think we've been really fortunate in terms of how we thought about it, versus a company who's gone more just a SaaS approach, but they're not living it maybe as day to day. I mean, you can get over that hurdle by really just being completely involved and entrenched with a partner if the opportunity is there. But if it's not, it's very hard to be solving for a partner and not living it on a day-to-day basis.
I'd love to use this opportunity to jump into some of the Q&A questions or some of the audience Q&As. I think it segues quite nicely off of the back of some of the stuff you're saying. So just a reminder, jump in there now if you haven't, upvote, ask your questions. We're going to be diving into those. But just to start, so Vinu says, other credit platforms he's come across, they usually struggle with the manual vetting process. So how are you managing that?
Yeah, that's taken a lot of work, and a lot more than we thought it would, I would say. When we looked at this business model 6 years ago, we thought, all right, in a year's time, we're going to be completely automating our underwriting process, because that's really the fundamentals. And where it gets really tricky is, we're underwriting completely different businesses. We can have a restaurant making an application, which is completely different to a construction company looking for funding. And so it's really just been a case of building up data over the years, putting through, moving from heavy analytics models to more machine learning focused models. And that's given us the opportunity to just continually reiterate, take performance of our loan book, throw that back into the model, and then continually tweak things to get to a situation where, only in the last couple of years have we had complete end-to-end automation where we had solved completely for that.
So just, I mean, that's interesting. And maybe I'm going to steal the spotlight for a sec just to pick on something you said there. Is like, what has been the biggest lesson for you in that? I think automation is obviously a end goal for a lot of people. It might not be something you can do immediately, but what has been the biggest lesson in that process for you?
Yeah, I suppose in our environment, you've got to be, super cautious, especially upfront. We're giving out money. If you get it wrong, you don't get money back. That immediately hurts your bottom line and your ability to continue as a business. So we've had to be really cautious about that upfront. But you've got to take those leaps of faith at the same time. If you feel things are working, you've got to, just like the product market fit, you've got to funnel all your energy in there and continually solve for that, so that, once you take a step back and that piece is solved, you're comfortable that you can take your hands off the wheel, sort of thing, and this will run itself.
Cool. Thanks for indulging me. On to the next question from Tumi. She wants to know, what are common red flags to be wary of when working with companies as a fledgling startup?
Yeah, I mean, if she's talking around, is someone just looking to understand your idea but really never move forward with you? I think be cautious around that. I think it definitely does happen. Really just share initially what you're comfortable with. Make it super appealing, and get to a stage where you start aligning yourselves on interest and commercials as soon as possible, rather than waiting too far down the line. If you've left it too late, but you've basically opened yourself up and spoken through everything, that's obviously going to put you in a bad position. If you're a fledgling startup, you need to, you don't have the ability to potentially survive something like that. So, yeah, I think trust is a massive thing, but develop that relationship with the person you're with, and try get as honest as possible as soon as possible. That's probably the best way to go about it.
And then Luke says, your first customers are a great source of feedback for your product direction. Do you have any tips for filtering through the feedback and deciding on what input is most important?
Yeah, I think our head of product will have a far better idea of that. But I mean, it's continual surveys. I mean, you have to have a certain number of customers with a certain amount of feedback before you can actually work off the back of that. So it's about just that constant engagement, whether it's through surveys, through phone calls, through customer visits, just to understand who they are and the pain points being solved for them. Again, I don't think there's any real silver bullets, but listen to your gut. I think after you've accumulated the information, you see what's making sense or what the common themes are, and then what sits comfortably with you, that this is the right call to make and decision to make to go forward.
So I'd like to highlight something you said, because I think that's actually a critical point. There is the bit about understanding pain points. I think feedback on its own can be misleading, because you can't change your product to every piece of feedback. But if you understand the pain point that the person experienced, which caused them to give that feedback, that is way more useful for product delivery. And you'll often find people have the same pain point, but different feedback. And then you can work on fixing the pain point as opposed to just reacting to the feedback itself. So I think that's a good point to highlight. And then Juan wants to know, how do you go about validating your ideas?
Yeah, I think, once you have an idea, move fast to get to an MVP scenario and get it out in the market. Don't be scared. Don't sit on it. Don't wait for perfection before you get it out there. It just needs to be at a level that it can work. And once you're comfortable there, put it into markets, and the market's going to validate it for you. If there's appetite for it, you'll start feeling it pretty soon thereafter. If you see that not a lot is happening around it, or there's no real buzz or excitement, that's the insight you need at that point in time, and you need to understand: is it a product tweak scenario? Is actually this is never going to result in any sort of product market fit for yourself?
And next question. When did you see a point of inflection in your business's growth, and what triggered that?
Yeah, I suppose lending is a very different environment, and I can say that from, if I compare it to my e-commerce company beforehand, where you had your product and it was a case of, pushing it as hard as possible and identifying the channels that really helped it grow. Lending is a different animal because you can't grow too quickly. You can't put too many loans out in the market until you've validated, the performance on those loans and if you're getting repaid. So you got to, you almost got to, you take it step by step, and you can't be too aggressive. So in our environment, we know the appetite's there. A lot of people are looking for funding or need access to funding. For us, it's really been largely around solving the scoring elements of that. And then once we had solved for the scoring elements, we were able to be, a lot more aggressive. And then it became, we were constrained on the capital side, but then we were able to access more capital, and then we could start growing there. So very different journey to how I think about my e-commerce venture, which was a case of finding that inflection point through channel. And that really comes through testing. And you got to test across all channels to understand, do you have a channel product fit? And once you'll know it when you see it, and when you see that sort of inflection in a channel, that's when you double down and make sure you get as much out of it as possible.
And then just a last question before we run out of time. Gareth says, and this is sort of relating to your lending as a different space, it is a competitive space and there are new entrants coming through all the time. So what is your plan for staying ahead of the game, potentially fighting competitors that have, I guess, like larger war chests behind them?
Yeah, you got to continually differentiate yourself. So, I think we had a bit of a market advantage that we were the first completely technological lender. But I mean, especially in times of COVID now, guys who maybe were a little bit more offline focused, they very much delving into the digital space. So we know the competitive landscape is only going to get more and more. But I think it goes back to what we're trying to do for our customers and solve for them. So we want to be the cash flow solution, however that might look in different forms and different products. It doesn't just have to be lending, but providing the cash flow solution for any SME in South Africa. So that's really our goal and focus, and we'll continue to develop there, listen to our customers and understand their pain points and how they want to, more successfully run their business. And those are the areas we continue to evolve in.
Fantastic. Trevor, thank you so much for your insights and sharing some of your experience in the industry. It's really cool to hear from people who have been there, done that, and are potentially still in the trenches. If anyone asks questions or still wants to ask a question that we didn't get to, we will try wrap that up and send it through soon. Also, these questions are being immortalized in content, so you'll be able to see the video and rewatch some of the questions if you'd like. The swag winner is, drum roll in the background, Morikla Madisha. Hope I pronounced that correctly. We'll be reaching out to you super soon and getting your swag, so keep an eye out for that. Also, keep an eye out for our next series. You should get something in your inbox near you. Hopefully your Gmail one or like. But yes, thank you, Trevor. Thank you, audience members. Thanks for bearing through with load shedding. We got there. We'll see you all soon. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Thanks, Joe. Bye.